Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today I have more of a chit-chatty type video. We're going to be talking about the kind of research that you should be doing before you get an exotic pet and why this stuff is really important. So now most of us who have experience with reptiles and keep several different kinds ourselves have probably seen big YouTubers buying them on a whim and all of this kind of stuff, and we are all aware, I'm sure, that there is a massive problem in the hobby of people buying things on impulse and not really knowing what they're getting themselves into because they haven't done their research. If you take your kid into a pet shop and you see that they have bearded dragons or green iguanas and you see this tiny little cute looking lizard, you have no idea that that thing is eventually going to get to about 6 foot and can be really aggressive and do some damage if it bites you and you're not spending enough time. And because people tend to impulse buy these things, they often also get dumped. And if you look at any kind of RSPCA or your local reptile rescue, you'll see the same kinds of animals over and over again. You'll see a lot of iguanas, you'll see a lot of bearded dragons, and you'll see a lot of snakes that people weren't perhaps expecting to get to the girth or the length that they did. And you'll also see a lot that maybe have a background where kids had them and they went off to university and just didn't have the time, and the parents are then left not really knowing what to do, not really knowing how to look after the animal, and they weren't really aware that the lifespan of some of these reptiles are so long as they are. And so in order to stop this kind of stuff from happening, it's really important that we educate people that they really need to do their research first. So I'm going to give you a few different reasons and a few different areas that you should be looking into before you get an exotic pet. So I've made a little list on my phone. I'm just going to go through these one by one. So veterinary care. Unlike most cute and fluffy animals, these guys do require specialist veterinary care, whether you have a snake, a lizard, gecko, you have a tortoise, turtle, whatever it may be. These guys are very different to your kind of standard small mammal or like furry cute thing that you might find more commonly at vets. So it's really important to do your research into your area and see if you have somewhere that is drivable, so that if you do have a problem with the animal that you're bringing home at any stage, that you do have access to proper care, because a normal vet is not really going to do the job. You really want to be taking your animal to someone that has experience with reptiles and amphibians, if that's what you choose to keep, because they are a specialist subject. And it's really important that if they do have a problem, that you get them the best care possible. The second thing you want to be looking into is, of course, diet and supplements. Even though a lizard is a lizard, leopard geckos versus bearded dragons versus iguanas, they all have different diet and supplementary requirements, and the amount of food they're going to need and the kind of ratio of live to vegetation type thing is also going to be not only different at the stages of their life, but different between the species as well. A lizard is not, in fact, just a lizard. They all require very different care. And so it's really important that you're not only researching what they need to eat, the ratios, at what ages, and all of that kind of stuff. It's really important that you're also researching the supplements. For example, you might need to be using calcium with D3, you might need to be using calcium without D3. The next thing you really want to be making sure that you are doing is researching your heating and lighting properly. There's variations of a couple of degrees on the heating and things, and you know, that's fine for most of these guys, but you really need to be knowing what you're doing, and you really need to be using the correct heating, the correct kinds of bulbs, and you also need to be aware that these lights need to be changed and how often you should be changing them. The next thing that I think people don't necessarily think about when they're getting the animal is the size, particularly where snakes and iguanas are concerned. They start off really cute and small, and generally the ones you see in a pet shop or you get from a breeder perhaps, you know, they're small, they're young, they're cute looking, and you don't necessarily realise that when you buy that first enclosure, that might not be the enclosure that your snake or pet or whatever it is will have for the rest of its life. Not only is that an extra financial cost, but just taking up space in your space may well be an issue for you. So checking the kind of size range at adulthood and seeing whether you're going to have to replace that exotic pet's tank or whatever you're keeping it in is really important to think about as well, so that you are prepared financially and space-wise ahead of time. And if this is something that you can't afford to replace, or you don't want to, or you realise they're going to get bigger than you expect, at least you haven't already gone and got the animal. The next thing that you want to be really careful about is potential health problems. Now this is something that I don't think many people actually think about before they get an exotic pet, because most of the time if you're buying from a reputable breeder or you have rescued one, say you've gone to your local reptile rescue and you've adopted through them, they will normally do all these checks, make sure they don't have parasites. They'll be coming to you with a clean bill of health. However, just because your animal comes to you healthy doesn't mean that it won't have problems later, which is going back to the first point, why it's really important that you have access nearby-ish that you can get to a proper exotic vet. But it's also really important that you are aware of some of the things that can go wrong with your specific animal. Reptiles and amphibians in general have much more different kind of common problems that would require veterinary care than say a mammal would. And it's really important that you, as someone who's done their research thoroughly, are aware of what these kind of things are, how to prevent them in the first place by doing your proper husbandry and making sure that your pet is cared for to a very high standard. But then if all of this fails and there is a problem, that you recognise the signs so that you can immediately rectify the issue and receive the right treatment. I feel like this is something that is often neglected and people don't necessarily tell you that you should be researching, but I really think it's really important to have a good base knowledge of the kinds of things that can go wrong, particularly with reptiles. So we're talking about things like metabolic bone disease, for example. It's really good to have a base knowledge of that. You know, the signs of parasites, little things like that, how to check for mites, all of these things that maybe you wouldn't necessarily think of or that you don't necessarily expect to go wrong. I still think it's really good for you as a new pet owner to have a good base knowledge of these things. Also why they happen, how you can prevent them, and the first kind of signs that maybe there is an issue happening. And the last thing that we're going to talk about is their lifespan. I know that when you get something cute and they're small, and it's particularly because they are small, I think you know, I get a lot of questions about how long is Gary going to live for? Is it like a couple of years? Because they're quite small. And if you think about sort of guinea pigs or like hamsters, rats or whatever, they all have like they're on the lower scale of lifespans. And so I think one thing to remember is to do your research about how long these guys live for, because I think it's really important to, if you can, be giving these guys a home for life. I know sometimes we all experience circumstances that we weren't expecting and that can change your life dramatically. But if you are looking to take on an animal, it's really important that I feel like we're going to take on animals when we expect to keep them for their life. It's very stressful for them to change hands and, you know, get used to new humans and new environment and all of that kind of stuff. So if you are going to pick an animal, make sure that you're aware of the potential life commitment that you are making and how long they are expected to live for, and make sure that you are prepared to take on that responsibility fully. As a responsible pet owner, I think that is the right thing to do, and you should be kind of having a good enough base knowledge of your animal anyway, that you should just know that. I really hope this video has been helpful for you. I'm sure most of you who watch my videos anyway are not such new owners, but for any of you that have kind of seen my main channel and have been sort of asking me in my DMs about these guys, I think it's really important to know that you really need to be doing a load of research about these guys, know a lot about the species you're looking into, and those were some of the points I personally think are really, really important for you to get to grips with before you even think about getting one of these guys or anything similar. I hope this has been really helpful for you, and I will see you in the next video. Okay, bye.